our last email comes to us from the Nerd Zone. And Nerd Zone says, documentary recommendation. This is really cool, you guys. If anybody on your channel wants to watch a documentary on Netflix, I have a recommendation. This documentary is about a famous painter, Bob Ross. This documentary talks about his series, and he had a short series on PBS. This documentary talks about his series and his life from the viewpoint of his son, Steve, and his many friends. This also talks about his private life and the battle of the rights to the Bob Ross name between his business partners, the Kowalskis, and his son, Steve. It's an interesting documentary. Please give it a watch. An interesting documentary is a bit of an undersell, my friend. Bit of an undersell. So when I initially, excuse me, I have to turn on the air conditioning. It is getting quite stuffy in here. My apologies. Yeah, so when I first got your email, Nerd Zone, I read it and I'm like, you don't have to explain Bob Ross to me. I grew up with Bob Ross. Bob Ross played, I don't want to say a big role in my childhood, but definitely a present role in my childhood. I don't exactly remember how I was introduced to Bob Ross. I want to say it was through my brother. But I was very young. I must have been around like 10, something like that. And I remember coming across this thing and just thinking like, why would I want to watch somebody paint? This seems like the most boring. As like a 10-year-old, this just seems boring. Why would I want to watch this? But it was one of those things that, have you ever eaten something that is so distasteful to you? And you say, that was weird, that was gross, but I feel compelled to try it again. And then you taste it again and you're like, no, it's still gross, but I just need to do it one more time. And so that's kind of how it was with me and Bob Ross. Is I would watch the show and I'm like, this is dumb. Why would anybody want to watch this guy paint paintings of things that are so uninteresting? Mountains and trees. Ugh, get out of here. But you get hooked. Like, there's something about his persona. There's something about Bob Ross's personality. In fact, this is how much I love Bob Ross, right? I've had my Bob Ross pop up here for a while. Totally forgot about that, actually. But yeah, Bob Ross, I really came to love, like, as a child. And whenever he was on, my brother and I would just sit down and watch the show. Maybe not for hours on end, but we would watch maybe 2 or 3 episodes in succession. We'd just sit down and, oh, Bob Ross is on. Yeah, can't think of anything else you want to watch. Ninja Turtles isn't on. Spider-Man isn't on. Let's put on some Bob Ross, because it was always on PBS. Yeah, so what I didn't know, what I was not necessarily aware of, was all of kind of the background stuff going on with Bob Ross. You know, you watch his show and he's constantly positive and he's putting out positive energy and positive vibes and trying to find ways to eliminate negativity, not just from his life, but to other people's lives and trying to inspire other people. He's such a happy guy that you just don't stop and think about the negativity or the hardships that came from his life. And I don't want to go into all the spoilers of the documentary. Like, for anybody who wants to watch the documentary, please go watch it. Please go watch it. I don't want to give too much away, but, you know, as Nerd Zone points out, Bob Ross had some business partners called the Kowalskis, and it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because one part of the argument is that Bob Ross never would have reached the height of fame and notoriety that he did if it wasn't for the Kowalskis. The other side of the coin is that they were a little underhanded. And they, you know, again, as Nerd Zone points out, fought for his name. And, you know, his son Steve, I always knew that Bob Ross had a son named Steve. Steve was on the show. Every now and again, like whenever Steve would paint a painting instead of Bob Ross, I changed the channel because I didn't want to watch Steve. I wanted to watch Bob Ross. But yeah, like that kind of stuff, you don't stop and think about like the toll, and to see and to hear the stories. And also, like, tiny, it's not really a spoiler, but it's a small note about the documentary is that, previously we mentioned the Kowalskis, his business partners, who were a little underhanded, to put it mildly. There was a lot of people in Bob Ross's life, directly, tangentially, whatever, who refused to make an appearance in this documentary out of fear that the Kowalskis would retaliate against them. They didn't want to say anything, either positive or negative, about Bob Ross because they're afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing and the Kowalskis are going to come after them. Who are, like, what? Hank, what? And again, everything's legal. I don't want to say everything's on the up and up, but everything's legal. It's very shady, and their business dealings were very underhanded. And I'll let you guys watch the documentary to kind of see this for yourselves. But to see and hear this story about Bob Ross's son and his legacy, and to have the name and to have essentially the mantle be passed down from your father, and you can't use it. It's such a fascinating story, you guys. It's such a fascinating story. I can't recommend this documentary enough, especially if you are a Bob Ross fan like myself. So if you've seen the documentary, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. If you haven't seen the documentary, are you a fan of Bob Ross? What are you expecting? What would you like to see from this documentary? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. What are they? Jump on down to the comment section below. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this video, click like. If you really like this video, click subscribe. And if you really, really like this video, click share. Because that is exactly what Batman from the animated series would want you to do. His name is Batman.